Just like to offer a big shout out to Touchdown Digital, the sponsor of this week's video. Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Glenn Samuel and you're watching Sniper Photography. Now today I want to talk to you about a topic which I think is very important. I often see people say that this particular thing isn't necessary, and that is planning your photographic shoots or your photographic outings, especially when it comes to landscape photography. Now, in front of me here, you will see all the lenses that I own. There's 11 lenses in total, starting from 14mm ultra wide fixed focal length right up to 150-600. Now, there's reasons why I have so many lenses, and naturally I don't take all these lenses out every time I go out. What I do, I plan my outings, especially when it comes to landscape photography. I plan where I'm going, and I use various platforms that are on the internet available to everyone. Because when you plan your photography outings, and we're talking about landscape photography here, you should be able to, with what you know you'll be confronting at the scene, what lenses to take. Now, I use YouTube obviously in Australia for research. Google Maps is very good. You got Flickr, which is still there. You've got Instagram and Facebook. All these platforms will enable you to narrow down your search. Planning is very, very important with your photography. I don't know how anybody can just go out and hope for the best. Well, if that's you, well, I'm happy for you, but your success rate would be much greater if you planned your photographic shoots or outings. Now, with all these lenses, naturally I don't take them, as I said, just stated, I don't take all these out with me. I mean, when you look at the 14mm ultra wide, I mean, that's just, it's a very, very wide lens. Now, I don't take that out with me when I know when I've got no foreground. The same with the 100-400. If there's no foreground, well, then I'd take this. But if there is foreground, I would take the 14mm or the 20mm ultra wide fixed focal length. Or if I want to really test myself, I can take out my 50mm Nifty 50, which every photographer should have in his bag. So what dictates what lenses I take is, after I do the research, is what area I'll be facing or what area am I going into. Now, if I do a research, and I research the areas that I photograph quite extensively, even though I live in the mountainous area of New South Wales, there are still areas there I have never photographed and I don't know what's there. So I like to plan for this. And when I do that, I know exactly what lenses to take. Now, the majority of my photography within landscape is done with 24mm. Now, I have a 16-35 here, which is probably the doyen of one of the landscape lenses. I might take that, probably would take that, but the 24-105 seems to be the one that I'm shooting with quite a lot, because most of my landscape images are taken at 24mm, because that gives me a good overall perspective of the scene. Sometimes, if I'm going to print the images really large from an area that I've researched, I use the 24mm tilt shift lens. Okay, that is a 24mm lens. I can use this as a normal 24mm lens, fixed focal length, but once I apply the tilt, it comes a tilt shift lens. If I know that I'm going in an area where there's a real lot of foreground, I'll either take my 20mm fixed focal length or the 14mm ultra wide. So you see what I'm doing here. I'm not taking all the gear with me. I'm taking what's needed. And the only way to know that is by doing research on the area that you wish to photograph. Now, waterfalls, for instance, most waterfalls have a lot of foreground element. So it'd be probably the 24-105 or the 16-35, Or if there's a real lot of foreground element in an area that I'm going to after finding out through the research, I will take the 20mm or the 14mm ultra wide, including the 24-105. So but predominantly I'm only taking 2 to 3 lenses on any outing, which leads us to this big bad boy here. Now, the 150-600 I use for wildlife photography, and I don't do much wildlife photography. 90% of my personal photography is landscapes, hence these lenses here. But every now and again I want to go out and photograph birds. If I do travel overseas, which I will be later on in the year, I will be taking the 150-600. It's a beast of a lens, it's heavy, so that does not come out when I landscape, on a landscape shoot, it just doesn't. The 100-400 might, it all depends once again on the terrain. But more often the 70-200 will come out, which is a brilliant Canon lens, Canon L lens. I'd probably take that. You see, so this is why I have all these lenses, but I don't take them out, all of them out in one go. If I'm going to an area, because another genre of photography I do is macro photography. Now, as I said, 90% landscape, 10% is shared between wildlife with the big lens and macro with a macro lens. A 90mm fixed focal length, 1-to-1 macro lens, proper dedicated macro lens. Now, if I'm going into an area which sometimes I know that I'm going to get insects, frogs, lizards, freshwater crayfish, I will take the Tamron macro lens with me because it's very handy to have. And being 90mm, this macro lens, it's a very good lens to use if you want to isolate your subject. The macro lens just isn't just a macro lens, even though this is 1-to-1, it's a proper macro lens. It's a great portrait lens because of the bokeh or the out of focus background you can get. And when you use a lens like this in the landscape, it's quite interesting. So that's why I've got all these lenses. But what dictates what lenses I take is through the planning. You have to plan your shots. You have to plan your images. You have to plan where you're going. So if you've only got 2 or 3 lenses, which is fine, find out what you need for that particular job. These lenses here are designed for a job. I don't have them because I'm a gear collector. I'm not a gear collector. I use every one of these lenses and they've been used extensively, just like my camera bodies. So these are a tool to trade. Regardless of being using it for personal photography, these are my tool to trade. So I said, if you've got 1 lens, 2 lenses, 3 lenses, probably 4 lenses, don't take them all out with you thinking you'll know it. You're only adding weight and a bit of confusion once you get there. The idea is to do your research and then think, right, I need a 24-105 or a 17-35 or a fixed focal length 35mm or a 50mm or a 70-200. So very interesting subject. It really does help if you plan. For me, I plan everything in my life, and especially when it comes to photography, because the old saying is, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. And I believe planning is probably in the top 5 of our photography experience. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about this video. Do you plan your video, or do you plan your photography outings? If you don't, let me know why you don't do that. Are you successful when you don't plan, or do you have just pot luck, or are you like me and you plan everything that you do? I'd love to hear back from you, and please put your comments down below. So that's it for another episode of Sniper Photography. Thank you for joining me here today. As I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, keep smiling. Bye for now.